I am Samuel Opana. I work with the African Union Development Agency, Nepad. I am seconded to the Eastern African Power Pool, coordinating the activities of Auda Nepad at Eastern African Power Pool. Okay, today's presentation will be made by African Union Development Agency on accelerating continental and regional integration projects in Africa. This is a roadshow for the continental projects, and we are showing it in Kenya and Uganda. So today's presentation will be on about African Union Development Agency, and then AU Agenda 2063 priority continental projects, especially on energy, and then project pipeline development. Finally, the recommendation by G20 on integrated market sounding. So Auda Nepad, as I've said, is African Union Development Agency, and it is the implementing arm of the African Union. Its main activities or core work is to coordinate and execute priority regional and continental projects, which are in Agenda 2063. The aim is to accelerate regional integration to achieve the Africa we want. Additionally, Auda Nepad provides knowledge-based advisory services and technical assistance to African Union member states and the regional economic communities. This is done to strengthen their capacity. And then it also acts as the continental interface on policy development, recommendation and implementation with partners and stakeholders. Finally, it undertakes resource mobilization for the member states and regional economic communities. Coming into the Agenda 2063, we know that it was adopted in the year 2015, and it enables the aspirations of the African people, and it is framed with the theme of Africa we want. The agenda of AU Agenda 2063 is operationalized through a series of 10-year implementation plans. And for the first decade, we had the 10-year implementation plan of convergence. For this decade, for the year 2024 to the year 2033, we have the agenda of 10-year implementation plan, which is framed as acceleration. And it is a roadmap that provides, or that is aimed to fast track Africa socio-economic transformation and achieving the African Union vision that is a prosperous, peaceful, and integrated continent. So these 10-year implementation plans, or the second 10-year implementation plan, is being guided by some priorities, which are the moonshots. So we have 7 moonshots, and these moonshots are interlinked to make sure that we achieve the accelerated roadmap towards the AU Agenda 2063. So to achieve all these moonshots and to achieve the 10-year implementation plans that we have in 5 series, we have some continental projects which are currently ongoing. But the continental projects which are related to energy are PIDA, which is a program for infrastructure development in Africa. We have AFSEM, which is African Single Electricity Market, and we have CMP, which is a Continental Power System Electricity Plan. So to come to the one which I've mentioned, which is PIDA, which is also called Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, we know that PIDA was established in the year 2012, and it is a joint continental plan by African Union Commission, Auda Nepad, and African Development Bank. It serves as a continental initiative as a strategic framework for infrastructure development. It is used as a common framework to coordinate the development of cross-border projects, which are, as you can see, we have energy, we have water, ICT, and of course, energy. So between the year 2021 to 2030, the African continent or African member states will need around 160 billion USD to make sure that these priority projects are implemented. And we know that we are facing some problems in the African continent. which is affecting these PIDA projects, because we cannot really rely on the traditional sources of finance, which is the government financing projects, because they are not sufficient and also they are not consistent. Again, if we rely on foreign direct investments, it exposes our countries to external debt and also is not sustainable. So whatever we have is relying on the domestic resources. And that is why Auda, Nepad, AUC are pushing for the 5% agenda. What does it mean? It means that we are trying to mobilize domestic finance from the domestic investors to increase their investments in the African infrastructure development to around 5%. But despite the fact that we have done much using the PIDA Agenda 2063 framework, we still have challenges, especially in the energy sector. And the challenges that we face in Africa, especially our member states, are we have expensive tariffs, which most people cannot afford. We have aging infrastructure or electricity infrastructure from transmission to distribution. And then the productive use of energy in our member states are still very low. And if you can, I know it is not a new thing unto us. We know that around 600 million people, which is almost half of the continent, are still not having electricity or do not have an access to electricity. So with that, AUC and the African member states came and decided to come up with some form which can help us have a universal access of electricity. And this one is developed through what we call the Continental Power System Master Plan, in short, CMP. CMP and what we also call the Africa Single Electricity Market. So what is this Africa Single Electricity Market, and what is also this what we call Continental Power System Master Plan? So AFSEM is a bigger elephant, and then under it we have the Continental Power System Master Plan. So AFSEM aims to create harmonized electricity market throughout the continent, whereby member states and the regional power pools can sell electricity or can trade electricity amongst themselves. So to make sure that this AFSEM comes into fruition, we have the Continental Power System Master Plan, which maps out a least cost power development plan in both transmission and generation, whereby identifying priority projects within the continent. And through that, we will have our member states and the regional power pools interconnected together. So during the development of this CMP, it was developed in phases. Phase 1, which was concluded in the year 2022, and then phase 2 kicked off from the year 2022 and was completed in the year 2023. So currently we are in the phase 3, and in phase 2, we identified some critical generation and transmission projects within the continent. And this master plan summarizes that we will need about $136 billion by the year 2040. And the generation is expected to increase from 1,200 gigawatts is expected to increase from 263 gigawatts to 1,200 gigawatts by the year 2040. So coming back home in the Eastern African Power Pool, the current installed capacity in the Eastern African Power Pool is around 98 gigawatts. But from the master plan, it is envisioned that by the year 2040, if we go using the business as usual, the generation capacity will be, or installed capacity will be around 237 gigawatts. And then if the region is fully integrated, we expect the generation to be around 422 gigawatts. And then if the continent is fully integrated, the generation in the region is expected to be around 402 gigawatts. So whatever is helping CMP to accelerate its implementation is what we call the 10-year infrastructure development plan, which, as we know, this year, South Africa is hosting the G20 members. So What are some of these priority projects which were identified at the Eastern African Power Pool? So we have very many projects at different stages of development. And these were, as you can see, we have generation projects starting from pre-feasibility to construction stage. So under feasibility, just to mention a few, we have the natural gas in Tanzania, which is around 2 gigawatts. And then the projects which are under transaction, Aisha Wind Power Plant, which is in Ethiopia. And it is expected to generate around 990 gigawatts. 990 megawatts, sorry. And when we come to the transmission projects within the continent, we see that for us to have or to meet the Africa we want, or the integrated continent, we have very many transmission lines which will be expected to interconnect our member states and interconnect various regions or power pools to other power pools. So in transmission projects, we have very many projects which are ranging all the way from pre-feasibility studies to construction. So just to mention very few projects, we have in project structuring, we have the project which is interlinked to Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania project, which is will help us to move power or to trade power between the Eastern African Power Pool and the Southern African Power Pool. So, during the phase 3 of the Continental Power System Master Plan, we have noticed that there are some challenges, especially in the preparation of, or early preparation of projects. We have realized that projects take a very long time to prepare, often taking around 6 to 8 years. Auda Nepad is trying to reduce that period of preparing this project so that we can meet or we can accelerate implementation of the priority projects which have been identified. And we are going to move away from preparing individual feasibility studies per project to what we call predictable pipeline of bankable priority projects, in that we prepare them as a group, and in that we prepared them simultaneously by identifying some of the consultants who can really accelerate this. Again, we are trying to promote our projects, but whatever we've been using, we have just been promoting a project at a time, and we have also been identifying a few investors or a few stakeholders whom we present these projects to. So with the G20 recommendation, Auda Nepad is trying to move from the traditional project market sounding events to an integrated value chain approach, whereby we present projects in totality and we present it to different stakeholders who might be interested at different development stage of the project. So we will have an upstream, midstream, downstream, and enablers of these projects approached at their stages of development. For instance, if I just want to explain this, in our mining sectors, we find that the mining industries are normally very much isolated from the grid. And we find that these mining areas are very much, have full potential, or the resources around those areas, we have wind and solar. So if there is a way on how these miners can be encouraged to make sure that they tap into this wind and solar or these resources which are near them to supply their works. So you'll find that if they do so, the community that is around at the end of the day will be supplied through distribution networks which might be expanded by the utility or by the government or by the miners themselves. So under the integrated value chain approach, we have the upstream opportunities where we do resource mapping. We map the resources that is needed. We look at how we can do local manufacturing, because currently in Africa, we import almost every product that we are using to set up our generation power plants, be it wind, be it solar. But we have resources within our continent. So we are calling upon us if we can have the local manufacturing centers set up in Africa, and this one can reduce on some costings. And then when you come to the midstream, we have the utilities, we have like the distribution operators, we have the transmission operators and the likes.